classes here at Texas Tech. So tomorrow is what used to be, we don't use these phrases anymore, but it used to be called Dead Day. But it's not called that anymore because of some of the terrible things that have happened during this period of time on college campuses. So we call this a study day. We call tomorrow a study day. And then your examinations start on Thursday. I have an examination of my 2 o'clock class at 4:30 on Thursday, but your exam, History 2301, is at 4:30 on Friday. You will receive on Friday your examination from Nathan, from Morgan, and from Sarah, all at 4:30 on Friday, and you will have until 7 o'clock that night to return them to you. Now, I know that many to return it to them. Now, I know that many of you are freshmen and you may be taking finals for the first time. I don't know that for sure, but you may be, and you've never gone through a 2.5 hour final exam. If we were face-to-face in room 104, we would be handing that exam out, and you would be taking your blue books up, and you would be writing for 2.5 hours, okay? This time, you're going to be doing it on your computer as you have done the first 2 exams. But you will be doing it in such a way that you have the first 20 points being just like the first 2 exams. That is, it's not cumulative, and it starts with the first lecture I delivered after your last exam. And I believe that was on the Cold War. So you had the Cold War and 3 or 4 lections on Vietnam and a lecture on civil rights. And then a lecture on the end of the Cold War, and then a lecture today. Those are the lectures that you are responsible for that first 20 minutes, 20 points. And then you will have what I call a super essay. Super essay, it's worth 10 points. And the best way to think of the super essay is you should look at all of the things that we've studied thematically. What have we studied? We've studied war. We've studied foreign policy. We've studied technology. We've studied presidential actions. And you will have a choice of 3 big questions to write on. You'll also have a choice of 3 questions for your small 5-pointer. Now, time management shouldn't be as big a deal this time in that you've got a lot of time. 2.5 hours is a long time. So I urge you to use your time wisely, that a 10-point essay is really important. Make sure you allow yourself enough time to write a good 10-point essay, okay? Give yourself time to write a 5-point essay. And the other essay is the 2-point essay on Last Night I Dreamed of Peace. Okay, I have chosen that question. Your TAs have helped me decide on the 3 questions that you will be assigned that are part of the 20-point examination, that is this last period. And then I am giving you 3 choices on the super essay. Okay, choose wisely. Choose something that you think you know enough about that you can convince Morgan, Nathan, or Sarah that you know something about this and that you're going to write a good essay. Now, one of the questions that I get commonly is how many words or how many pages or any of that kind of stuff do I need for the super essay? That's not any way to look at it. Wow, how I would look at it is you trying to convince those 3 TAs that you know what you're talking about, that you got the course, and you have 2.5 hours to do it. So if you're turning your exam in at 6:30, using only 2 hours instead of 2.5, and you are short in their mind, then you left something on the table. My argument is that you need to convince them that you got the course. That's why I do super essay, okay? With that, I'm going to open it up to the audience, and anybody have any questions, have at it.
I have a question, just to be sure. You're saying that we have the whole day to do the exam, or?
I'm sorry, Juanita, repeat that, please.
What is our
Said that
time frame to do the,
Hold on, we're with Juanita right now.
my question is, what is the time frame to do the whole exam? Is the whole day, or is it from 4:30 to 7 o'clock, you said?
No, it's exactly from 4:30 to 7 o'clock, 2.5 hours.
Oh, okay,
It's,
thank you.
it's consistent with what we've been doing. It's an online synchronous examination.
Okay, thank you.
And the university has determined that 2.5 hours is long enough to ask a student to write an exam. And I've determined that within 2.5 hours, since I've used similar types of exams previously, I've determined that it can be done in 2.5 hours. When I think about students having to write it out on a blue book, generally speaking, the 2.5 hours is enough time.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Emily, you had a question?
Yes, is multiple choice going to be included also in the?
Yes, and it's a multiple choice only on the lectures since the last exam.
Hey, I got a question.
Brett.
Could you say the date one more time? I missed it. I'm so sorry.
The date of what?
The final exam.
Oh, yes, it is this Friday, May 7th at 4:30.
Thank you.
And here's another thing that you need to know, because a lot of you are taking these exams for the first time. The final exam schedule is set by the university, and it's set like 5 years in advance. So it's not something where I decide when to have it. And the reason for that is we don't want to have my exam compete with someone else's. So if you have another professor that's trying to say their time is 4:30 to 7, that's wrong, because it's based on the time that this class meets. So classes that meet at 3:30 every Tuesday and Thursday have a common exam time of 4:30 to 7 on this Friday. Okay? Anyone else?
I have a question. How long
Kevin.
How long is that super essay going to be, like page length?
Yeah, I'm not going to give you a page number of how long. I'm going to say right until you've said everything you need to say. Just remember this, that Nathan, Morgan, and Sarah are going to be grading approximately 85 examinations. Okay, that's about how many they each have assigned to them. And so they are there. While grading examinations, essays is subjective. Y'all understand that, as opposed to the objectivity of a multiple choice question. But what you're trying to do is convincing whoever your TA is that your paper is really good. And when they're reading they're reading you plus 83 more, they're going to form an opinion about your answer versus those other 83. I actually asked them to read all of the exams first, all of the essays first before they even grade them. And I ask them to do that so that they're not prejudicing somebody that they read first versus somebody that they read last. So they're getting a handle on how that question was handled by everybody that is their student. And Morgan or Nathan or Sarah, if you want to add something to that, go right ahead.
I would add, if you are, doing your super essay, as previously stated with your other essays, I would start with that one first, and I would be sure to lay out the 3 points you're going to discuss, have an intro, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion if you have time. But do the essays first. It's kind of been almost like a little theme that we've kind of noticed, that some struggle with the essays. So if you struggle with time management, start there. And with the multiple choice, like just work backwards. And I think that would help y'all a lot in terms of your essays.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I have a tendency to over-stress on organizing my essay rather than just writing it. Thank you.
That's a good point, Kevin. in terms of organization, what I usually do when I'm not under a time gun, and you are sort of under a time gun, is to write that outline out on a 3x5 card, or whatever you've got that you use. Write that outline out with your points. Because if it says name 3 and talk about it, that's pretty easy. But if it doesn't say name 3 and you have to think of how many you want to write on, it's a little more difficult. But think of it this way: 10 points for the big one, 5 points for the normal one that you have been writing on, and 2 points for the last night I dreamed of peace. So you certainly want to spend twice. I would think you'd want to spend or give yourself twice as much time for a 10-pointer as a 5-pointer, and maybe 5 times as much time as for a 2-pointer. It doesn't mean in the way you write it, but in the way you think, okay? In the way that you put the thoughts together. Because the 2-point last night I dreamed of peace, which is important. I'm not denying that, but you've already seen those questions. You've each of you dealt with those questions. So that question, you have seen it before, and that one ought to kind of come to you if you read the book. You ought to be able to knock that one out fairly quickly, whether it's at the very end when you've done the other 2, or whether it's at the beginning. I'm kind of with Morgan on that, as I like to go where the big money is, and the big money is in the 10-pointer. Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Taylor.
Yes, so I'm kind of going back a little bit. On one of your lectures, America Goes Home, you talked about the legacy, and you talked about the legacy of presidents, and you said it was Truman, Eisenhower, JFK, and I couldn't catch the rest of them, and I wondered if you remembered what you said.
Do I remember what I said? Well, let me think a minute here. Let's see. Let's go with it. Truman, Eisenhower, JFK, and then LBJ. And LBJ is generally considered to be the big one because it's his land war when he puts the men in there. And then Nixon, and Nixon sort of finishes it. And then Nixon is out of office. Remember, he resigns. And Gerald Ford takes over, and Gerald Ford is the president at the end when Saigon falls. And then I think I probably added Jimmy Carter, who defeats Gerald Ford, and I add him only because because Jimmy Carter allows men who had dodged the draft and gone to Canada to come back. Grants them amnesty. So it's still sort of attached to it. So that's why I started with Truman and ended with Carter.
Right, okay, thank you. And then Nixon made Ford president, correct?
What he does is he names Ford vice president. And under the a new amendment to the Constitution that we put in when John Kennedy was assassinated and we went without a vice president, we decided that it's important to always have a vice president. So Nixon names Ford his vice president, and it has to be approved by the Senate. It's a vice and consent. And so the vice president becomes Gerald Ford. And then when Nixon leaves office, Gerald Ford assumes the presidency. Then Ford has to go through what Nixon just did. He has to name a vice president, and he names a guy by the name of Rockefeller. Nelson Rockefeller. I don't think I mentioned this, but it's kind of interesting. He names Nelson Rockefeller to be his vice president during his period of time, and then Ford gets defeated by Jimmy Carter, whose vice president is a guy that just died last week, a guy by the name of Walter Mondale from Minnesota.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Osahan.
Yeah, how many multiple choice questions will there be? There's
20.
still 20. Okay.
There's 20, and they're each worth 1/4 of a point. So since you asked that question, I will say this, that the multiple choice, generally how I advise students on the multiple choice, whether you're doing it at the beginning or the end, sometimes what happens on multiple choice is you get stuck on one. You can't decide whether it's A or B. You got it down to, you got rid of the stupid answer and now you're down to 3, now you're down to 2 and you can't decide. So just leave it blank for that moment and go on and do the rest of the exam. And then sometimes what happens as the time that you're writing your super essay or your other essays, it'll come to you because you say, damn, that's right, I remember that. So then you can go back in and answer that question because it's only worth 1/4 of a point. And don't leave it blank completely, but it's still only worth 1/4 of a point if you get it wrong.
And for the other essay, not the super essay or the essay on Last Night I Dreamed of Peace, how many topics does it cover?
Well, you'll be given 3 choices, and the TAs, your particular TA has chosen from a series of questions. I make up the exam, but I allow the TAs to pick particular questions for their group. And generally speaking, what the TAs have all chosen is to have a question on pretty much to cover the 3 topics. They've chosen either questions about presidential leadership on that particular time, or they've chosen questions about Vietnam, or they've chosen questions about the Cold War. So you should have a choice of questions. That for sure will be a question about the main topics that I've talked about.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Taylor.
Me again, yes. So also on the same topic of Nixon and Ford, you said the US wants to help stop the communist attack. So they ask for how much money was it? Or they asked for something, I didn't catch it.
Yeah, I think the number I probably gave was something like 468 million. It's kind of a crazy number, and I've seen it written in different ways. But basically, whatever Ford asked for I think the thing that you need to know, whatever he asked for would not have been enough. That by the time he's asking for that money, not only are the American people represented by their congressmen tired of Vietnam, but it's also a matter of it's too late. The communist soldiers are at the door. The tanks are coming, and it won't make much difference. The idea behind it was it would help with supplies and stuff. And this is a controversial thing with American veterans, in addition to historians, is how much money would it have taken? And generally speaking, the answer is it wasn't a money issue. By that time, it was a matter of training. It was a matter of desire. It was a matter of the ARVN soldiers not being equipped. Remember, as I talked about, President Thieu has a country that started out with the enemy in his country.
Hmm.
And so Nixon had pledged that he would bring in the B-52 bombers. By that time, it's too late.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep. Anyone else?
I had a quick question, Professor.
Aditya?
Yeah.
You're on your phone. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, can you repeat what you said about the big essay again, the 10-point essay? Like, what's it gonna be on, or what are the general ideas behind that question?
Big themes. Big themes. Let's think about some of the themes we talked about here. We talked about technology. We talked about war. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about presidential leadership. So if I gave you a question about any of those things and said, think of the whole course, okay? I'll give you one really quick hint because I only have 97 people left and I want to punish those that just got off. Ha ha ha. And you stayed with me. So here's a clue. Make sure that you write down, because you can use your notes, as you know, just you can't use anything outside of your notes, but you can use your notes. Make sure you have written down the axioms of foreign policy that I talked about. okay? Because those axioms may allow you to use them in some of your answers, okay? And I gave that, I don't remember when I gave that lecture, but I think that day what I usually do, and I hope I did it with this class, but you know, talking into a computer is different than talking to you in the big room. In the big room, what I generally do is put that slide up there, and then I say, take out your cameras and take a picture, or I'm going to give you time to write it down while I go get a drink of water or something. And I think that's what I did with you. I gave you all time to write it down. I hope I did, because it's important.
Thank you, Professor.
Yep. Oh, one other thing, let me say this. In the big essay, which I always say is did you get it? Did you understand the course from beginning to end kind of thing? One of the things that I'm always interested in, and it's okay if you disagree with something that I've said that's not based on a fact, but it's based on an interpretation of a fact, and you want to take me on in that essay, that's fine, okay? If you're taking me on by an opinion that I presented, that's fine, because I'm trying to create thinkers. I'm trying to create analysts. We always say about history, it's about critical thinking. And if you've gotten nothing out of this course other than this, that we want you to think critically about what it is you see, what it is you read, what it is you hear, then we've done our job. One of the most frustrating things to me is watching television and watching politicians on both sides. I'm not making a political statement here, but when I watch people try to say that, let's look at the history of this and then get the history completely wrong, get all the facts wrong, and then try to make a judgment about it, pisses me off, okay? Use that word. So from my perspective, I'm trying to teach freshmen to think, make you think critically. I'm trying to help you look at something and read it and say, well, I think what I'll do here is examine the source. Maybe I'll see whether that person making that comment is either smart enough or has done the research to have an opinion like that, especially if they're going to rely on history and maybe they don't know the history. That's why we teach history, okay? So if in your analysis and your writing, if you think that something I said was wrong, you can say that as long as you have something to back it up. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? I'm not trying to create mini-milums here, M-I-N-I. I'm trying to create people who think. I'm also trying to create, and I hope that I have done this with all of you. You're taking a history course, perhaps, because you're required to take it by the state of Texas law that says that every student who graduates with a degree with any degree from a public university has to take 6 hours of US history and 6 hours of government, which includes Texas. It's sort of a job security thing for guys like me, you might say. But normally, and it's another reason why in our history department, we require all of the US historians to teach freshman history every other year. Okay, not every year, but every other year. So I'm a Vietnam War scholar. That's my specialty. I'm a military historian, but they require me to teach a big class like this every other year. And I'm fine with that, because at the same time I'm teaching you, many of you not even born since 9/11 happened, I'm also teaching 30 and 40-year-old graduate students. I'm teaching people that are earning their PhD to go on and do what I'm doing now. And so I have this huge difference of exposure to education, exposure to history, exposure to living, with my other students. And so from my perspective, I'm trying to create an interest in you in history. Generally speaking, out of 250 students like I have here, 50 of you might, maybe 100 of you will take another history course, a 3,000 level history course or a 4,000 level history course, which do meet your requirements. You can take 2300 and 2301, or you can take 2301 and 3330, which is a whole course on just Vietnam, or a whole course on just World War II, or my war courses, or hell, this summer I'm teaching a film class, war through film kind of stuff. So you'll take another history course because you bought into this one. That's what I always hope for, is that I'm going to get a whole bunch of people that say, hey, maybe this history thing isn't so bad. And the greatest compliment I get from any of you, and I've gotten it from a few of you already, is I hate history, but I like this course. But generally speaking, I hate history. I understand that. I went through an entire bachelor's and master's, 2 master's degrees, and never took a history course because my university didn't require it. Now I'm a historian, taking lots of history courses. So I hope that you are turned on by something that you learned that might make you want to specialize. We have people that teach Russian history, Chinese history, European history, and they're all pretty good professors. African history. So I hope that you'll buy into something that happened, you got interested in it, and you'll take another history course. My 2 cents worth. Nathan.
Yeah, I took your film course on, I think it was War Cinema. That's what it was titled at the time. I thought that was the neatest thing in the world, and I thought it was super cool how you went from almost, I mean, it started at what, World War I, and like All Quiet on the Western Front, all the way up to drone. I think it was a drone. And it went from telling the story of war to propaganda to back to telling the story of war. And I thought that was just so neat how the history changed and how it was used. It was just a really interesting course.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Nathan. I remember you being in there as an undergrad, and actually I started that course with one film that everybody thinks is the worst film ever. It's called Starship Troopers. And I start with that because I think it's the perfect war film. And then because, who doesn't like killing bugs? What the hell? So I start with that. And then I ended with a film called Eye in the Sky, which is about Kenya. It's about terrorism and what happens when all these men and women sit in Las Vegas at a base in Las Vegas and use drones to kill people in Africa. And what are the ethical insinuations of something like that? So those are 2 extremely different kinds of things. But yeah, that course, I'm actually teaching that course this summer on Thursdays, I think. And then I teach another course called The History of Small Wars. And that's a 4,000. I think all of you can get into the 3,000 if you want it, but you can get into the 4,000 only with my permission because it's a senior level course. And so, those are just kind of cool things that we do around here. Yeah, well, thanks for that, Nathan. Appreciate it. Rowan, you had your hand up?
Hello? Oh, I was just wondering if we could possibly go over the axioms of foreign policy.
I'll tell you what, let me see. I'm trying to think a minute if I have them here. I mean, I don't have them like this. Does anyone have them if someone can, you have them, Kathy? Okay, here's what I'll do then. If you will, Kathy, if you will say number 1 is, and then I'll comment on it. Would that work for you, Rowan?
Yeah, I actually have like a list of foreign policy stuff. I'm just making sure it's correct. Is it like isolationism, expansionism, or no?
No, those are important. And you need to know those because you can use them in the way we look at this. But the axioms were things that I put up. And Kathy, if you'll give me number 1, I'll just make a quick comment on each one.
Was self-interest is the primary motive. That It was based on
Okay.
self-interest.
The comment on that is anyone, whether they're a dictator or whether they're a Democrat, small d, they have to think of their own self and their own country before they make any policy decisions regarding what happens with foreign policy. Go ahead. Number 2.
Number 2 is military power is a legitimate ingredient.
Yeah, virtually every country has military available, military available to them, and they will sometimes choose to use it. So it doesn't make any difference whether it's a small country or a big country. They will they will think of armed, using arms to project their own attitudes towards their neighbors or towards someone else. Some would argue that Canada doesn't use their military as much as the United States uses its, and ours military is bigger than everybody's. But at the same time, every country will have that available to them, the use of force to make foreign policy decisions.
Number 3, politicians exhibit cohesion.
Yeah, this is the one that I say I started teaching this stuff 15 or 20 years ago, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it doesn't exactly hold together now. But my point is that most of the time, American politicians, meeting congressmen, representatives, and senators, rally around the flag when we go to war, or rally around the flag when we make decisions on foreign policy. That certainly happened at 9/11. It sort of happens when we are attacked. It doesn't always happen the same way when we attack others. But you could certainly make an argument that over the last few years, it's not quite as evident. We're pulling out of Afghanistan on 9/11. Which is the 20th anniversary of sending troops into Afghanistan. And some would make the argument that we're not together on this, that Joe Biden has decided to do this. Actually, Trump decided to do it. And yet there are many in Congress that are objecting to that decision. So we generally say, well, if we're attacked, we're definitely going to rally around ourselves. But when we're occupying other countries, it's a little more difficult. But generally speaking, we have always said foreign policy disputes end at the water's edge, meaning when we go out there to do it, we are a little bit more cohesive about it than we are otherwise on domestic policies and things like that.
Number 4, president is the major leader on foreign policy. Only Congress can call for war. The president is just the commander.
Right. The president of the United States is the one who receives ambassadors. He's the one that conducts foreign policy. But, however, only the Congress can declare a war. Now, having said that, we haven't declared war since World War II. Since Pearl Harbor, we haven't declared war against anybody. And yet at the same time, we have been in many wars. Every war that I teach in my small wars class, almost except for except for I guess the Spanish-American War, is a non-declared war. So basically, we don't declare many wars, but we do go to war. And the commander-in-chief runs the military. He is, and I'm not trying to introduce a whole lot of new material, although I'll give you this because there's 82 of you left now. Thank you for staying with me. After the war in Vietnam, and I had a slide on this, but I don't think I gave it to you. The United States passed what's called the War Powers Act. And the War Powers Act essentially said that the President of the United States can only send troops into battle for 60 days without approval of Congress. And then he can get an extension for another 30, and that's 90 days. So a little tidbit if you want to throw that in somewhere. It's called the War Powers Act of 1973. And we did that because in Vietnam, we fought a war without any authority for about 64 to 73 for about 9 years. Okay, go ahead, Kathy.
Number 5, military leaders are the last to recommend war.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception, a myth about this, that it's always the military that wants to go to war. And I argue just the opposite. It's the military that will tell the politicians that are making decisions, it will tell them, we're ready and we can do it. But you have to understand what's going to happen. Men and women are going to die. That will be on you. It won't be on us, even though it's us that's dying. And generally speaking, the military will always try to avoid conflict because conflict breeds death on our side and on the enemy side. I know some people that I disagree with 100% that try to make the argument it's always the military wanting to take us to war. Not true. I do think it's the military that once we're in it, get very upset when they want to do it halfway, or want to come home before it's finished. There are a lot of military people saying this is a mistake in Afghanistan because there's going to be a whole lot of particularly women that are going to be subjected to the efforts of the Taliban to keep them from being educated and stuff like that. But I guarantee you, before we went into that war 20 years ago under President Bush, the military was saying, now you understand, Mr. President, we need to get in and out. We got in and we didn't get out for 20 more years. But it's not the military. The military, generally speaking, is trying to avoid war, not advocate for it. And go ahead.
6, only civilians can be president or commander in chief.
Is this the last one or is there 7?
No, there's 7. I had 7.
Okay, so this next one is only the military. Yeah, think of it this way. Only when we elect a president, they have to take off the uniform. And in a lot of countries, it's not like that. We do not allow the commander in chief to be a military person. They can have been a formerly military person, but we don't allow them to wear the uniform while they're in office. They cannot be commander in chief as a military person. They have to be a civilian elected by the people in order to be the commander in chief. Another way to think of it is this way. We do not allow those with the guns to decide when to use the guns.
Number 7 was the U.S. is never prepared for war. We have the tools, but we're not ready.
Yeah, the idea there is that we can talk about being prepared, but if you look at every single war America's been involved in, all the way back to the revolution. Well, the revolution, we weren't a nation yet, I guess we could argue, but certainly from 1812 on, the War of 1812, every war. We've never been ready. That is, we don't have a standing army ready to go fight somebody. Instead, we get rid of our armies, get rid of our machines, get rid of our equipment, and then another war starts and we got to start all over again. We are not a nation that likes being at war. Our civilians don't like it. We now have an all-volunteer army, but we have an amendment in place that we can draft. We can do that. But what we can't do, what we don't like doing, is going to war. Therefore, we don't seem to get ready for it. After every war, we decide to cut back on our military budgets. We decide to, and in doing that, we don't increase our diplomatic budget to make up for it, which would be a good thing to do. But we don't do that. So generally speaking, we are always playing catch up whenever we go to war. That's the 7?
That's it.
Good. So what you know, if you were presented with that issue, then you could think about all the things we've talked about and how it all applies, okay? Anything else?
I have a question about when the essay and the final exam would be graded and put in Blackboard.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that, Ryan. So what happens, the students, my TAs have a lot of grading to do, and they also are all taking 3 classes and writing papers for their graduation. So I have to give them the maximum amount of time. For those of you that are graduating seniors, you will have your grades put on Blackboard by, let's see, I got my calendar here. You will have your grades put up on Blackboard on May 11th, if you're a graduating senior. That's Tuesday, May 11th. So TAs, write this down too. If you are not a graduating senior, you will see the grades posted along with your participation grade. You will see those grades posted by about noon on Sunday the 16th. Okay? And the reason for that is I have to put them into the registrar's office voting, registrar's office on Monday the 17th. Okay? So that's when it'll happen. Now, there's been some confusion about Blackboard. As I told you guys early on, I hate Blackboard, hate everything about it. I don't use it other than for grading. I even had a problem that some of you have brought to my attention that gave me extra credit. And that is that all I care about on Blackboard is the total number. I take the total number and I convert it to a letter grade. And I put that letter grade into the registrar's office. Now, I've already had this problem in that extra credit, Blackboard doesn't handle that well. You have to have a special equation to put it in. And I had some people saying, I gave you extra credit and you put the number in and my grade went down, my percentage went down. Well, that's not a way to look at it, even though I understand why you did that, because that's the way Blackboard computes it. So the equation that I should have put in by putting in 4 and saying that that's the maximum credit, then that's 100%, and it only raises your percentage like a half a point or something. That's not the way to look at it. The way to look at it is at the very end, when I've added it all up and Nathan and Morgan and Sarah have given me the numbers, those 4 points will be on top of all the numbers that you've accumulated for the whole semester. So if you're at 68 and you have extra credit, you would have been at 68. That was your final thing. Your 4 gives you 72. Okay, so that's how that works. So I take Blackboard after you've seen your total, and I decide what to do about a letter grade for the registrar's office. Okay. I didn't build in a letter grade off of Blackboard. It can be done, but I don't like Blackboard making that decision for me. Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Anything else? Well, thank you to the 73 that stayed with me. I appreciate it. You're probably the same 73 that stay with me all the way to the end of the Q&A every week. It's very much appreciated. I hope that I will see you folks again. If there's anything I can do for you as you pursue your academic careers, I'm in Holden Hall 54, and I hope to be there next fall in person. And I hope y'all come by and say hi to me sometime, okay? Y'all, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Professor.
you.
We'll definitely try to meet you in person.
Professor.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.